these are reasons why instructors say they don't want to teach kids that age, right? They don't want to teach 3 and 4-year-olds because they're lazy and they roll around on the ground. Or I don't want to teach 5 and 6-year-olds because they don't have discipline. They interrupt me all the time. If you're understanding that's part of their stage of development, you can go with it and you can help them grow through your experience. And you're going to have very successful programs if you do it the right way. My experience, my extensive experience in martial arts is giving me this from this top-down view of how the program can develop and evolve, which is really neat because that way 3 and 4-year-olds, when they graduate the 8 skills, then they can go into the 5 and 6-year-old program, and then they work on 8 new skills that are appropriate for the stage of development while learning martial arts. Then they graduate and then they go into the core skills and learn 8 new skills, and then they go to extreme skills and then elite skills. So it really extends the lifespan of their martial arts journey because there's 8 different skills now that they're building by using martial arts as the vehicle versus trying to train in martial arts and acquire skills through their experience. So the same concept carries over to your martial arts class. You might have a kid who doesn't have really good jump psychics, but they're highly intellectual and they can pick up a form just like that, right? We see all of that. And that's why SKILLZ is so cool, is because there's 8 different skills they're assessed on, and you get a score of 1 to 5, so you can see where your strengths are, where you have room for improvement, and where you kind of fit in the middle on those programs.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 7 Figure Secrets podcast. Jennifer Waters here, and today I have a very special guest. Many of you guys will know who she is. She's been in the martial arts industry for over 25 years with experience in child development, as well as developing the Little Ninja Preschool martial arts program. She is the founder and huge influencer of SKILLZ worldwide, and has been utilized in over 1,000 martial arts schools around the world. Super excited to have Melody Johnson here on the 7 Figure Secrets podcast. Melody, welcome in.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's about time, right?
Yeah, I know. Man, it's been crazy, and hopefully I don't talk too much about this, but back in the day, I remember looking through magazines that were circulating at the time, cutting out articles and watching DVDs that were getting sent, and you were on those. And, you were doing your thing even back then, really with a focus that I think a lot of people didn't have, which is a lot of people were more focused on the techniques or what style was best. And I think for you, your focus came to teaching kids martial arts and being the go-to person. So how did you go about transitioning from martial artist to child development consultant? Because that's kind of who you are right now. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, when I first started teaching martial arts, my passion was competition, and really that's where my focus was leaning in towards. Mostly our black belts, the high-level students, the competition team, the demo team, and although their talents inspired me, I was also just having this tug of war on, losing the students who weren't quite the competitors, who loved just being in the martial arts environment, but just struggled to keep up with the older kids. And I felt bad every time I lost a student who just wasn't performing at that high level. And after a while, my heart just couldn't take it anymore. And I knew there had to be a way to be able to target these kids who aren't necessarily the anomalies. I was an anomaly growing up in martial arts. So I started studying child development and realized that a lot of the things that we were taught in our martial arts instructor training programs was more in the technical aspects of building martial art, and not really targeting their intellectual, their emotional, or their social stage of development. So that's really what sparked my interest.
Yeah, and having gone through the SKILLZ University crash course, I've been doing martial arts since I was a kid, and I've been to a lot of different things, a lot of instructor universities. And I can tell you, man, there's a big piece missing when it comes to understanding where children are at development-wise and how they think, how they respond. And you had some great examples of just kids and the way that they respond to things, or their lack of response in classes as well. Do you think that that's something where you feel like the industry just still hasn't evolved yet to that point of recognizing those subtle differences in age?
Absolutely. There's so many aspects to becoming a martial arts instructor, and a lot of it stems from being a good martial artist yourself, and that's really where a lot of martial artists put their passion into. So there is so much room for growth, and there's so much more that we can be doing when we start to understand their stages of development. So it's exciting to see more and more schools not only taking an interest in the stages of development, but then when they learn it, starting to go, man, I really can't wait, jump on the mat and apply the things that I just learned, things that were normally stressing me out. Now I understand the why behind it, and that's exciting too.
Yeah. Why do you think it's so important for instructors and martial arts school owners to put focus on this as maybe as opposed to or maybe in conjunction with going deeper in their style? Like why do you think this is so important to focus on these elements of the emotional and the social and the physical development of kids?
That's because it's what our market wants and needs. When you if you ask a room of 100 parents, raise your hand if you want your child to throw perfect kicks and punches, you're gonna have a few hands go up. But if you say raise your hand if you want your child to have better discipline, better confidence, better focuses, which is what we use in our martial arts strategies, right? We say martial builds discipline, it builds confidence, it builds focus. But yet, if we don't understand the why and the how behind that, when it comes to targeting their stage of development, when you start to do that and you do it at a very high level, you're going to target not just parents who want their children to learn self-defense, but parents who just want their child involved in sports and activities that help them become the best versions of themselves with intent. When we think about it, our competitors in general are soccer, football, baseball, and a lot of that is just competition oriented. And if the children aren't good athletes, then they're not going to thrive, and they're going to be bench warmers, and the parents are going to try to find another activity. And martial arts is just very unique in the sense that we can give and deliver what the parents want and what the parents need, what the kids need, and use martial arts as the vehicle. It's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And this has been a phenomenon that I've seen in our own school. And I talk to school owners about this all the time. I tell people, start kids early. Like if you don't have a preschool or 4 or 5-year-old, class, like why not? And a lot of the times I get pushback around, well, they're not old enough to actually learn real martial arts. That's a lot of pushback that I get. The other thing is that they say, well, it takes too many instructors to teach them. It's worth way more effort. And sometimes even people charge less for that age group, which I'm not a big proponent of charging less than, but it's like they devalue it because of the child's age. You developed the Little Ninjas program. Like, talk a little bit about why you feel that getting kids started early is important.
Well, because if you catch them early and they start to thrive early and parents see the value in your program and it becomes a non-negotiable, which if you do it the right way, and when parents have to pick and choose what activities they're going to put their child in, if you're presenting yourself as not just a martial arts program, but a child development facility, they're going to stick with you longer. But the benefits of getting them early is you get them early before they join other sports and activities. And even in my school, in my experience, in several of our skill schools, they get kids who come back. So they'll get kids who say, you know what, my child wants to try soccer, or my child wants to try football or baseball. And they go and they have a somewhat good experience, but it's not the same as the environment that you provide in your martial arts school. That's to me, that was one of the things I absolutely loved, is when they would come back. They're like, yeah, he tried this sport. And he was like, nope, it's not the same. So we're back here at SKILLZ, which is super, super cool.
Yeah. I think that you hit the nail on the head. When you can get them started very young, it gives them such a different foundation. And I think after that, they compare everything else that they do to the foundation that they had. And to be honest, there's not a lot of magical things that they can do or facilities that they can be a part of that are usually like their first martial arts school that does it right. Obviously the school has to do it right. Going through SKILLZ myself, being part of the SKILLZ Worldwide Network, I'm going through and I'm learning all about the stages of development. I think this is such a powerful concept. And obviously, being involved in martial arts for a long time, I understand, okay, you're going to teach a 4-year-old a little bit different than you're going to teach an 8-year-old. But you broke it down even more. And I was just wondering if you could share maybe some of those stages of development with our with our viewers, because they're so powerful if people can just grasp this.
Sure, sure. The first stage of development is going to be your preschoolers, and that's typically your 3 and 4 year olds. That's the stage of development I have right now, the way it's presented is 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 to 9, and 10 to 14 year olds. But post COVID, it's kind of shifting. There's a lot of parents who are holding their children back from jumping into kindergarten until they turn 6. That's what happened with my son. He started kindergarten in 2020. So that can kind of be modified. But let's give you an example of your preschoolers, your average 3 and 4 year olds, sometimes 5 year olds. One of the things that a lot of martial arts instructors get very frustrated with is when they're trying to get these 3 and 4 year olds to sit still, legs crossed, hands on their knees in a black belt position. And they want them to sit still for an extended period of time, which makes a lot of sense because if a child's sitting still, they're displaying the discipline that we're trying to build through the martial arts. But unfortunately, in their physical stage of development, they have very low tone in their muscles, in particular in their core muscles. So for a 3 or 4 year old to sit with their legs crossed, hands on their knees for an extended period of time, you really have to have muscle development in your ab muscles and your back muscles, which isn't necessarily there. If you think about it, your core is holding up your shoulders, but also your head, which weighs the same amount as a bowling ball. So when a 3 and 4 year old is sitting like that, what you should expect is for as their shoulders and their head gets to get heavy and their core starts to get tired, they're going to start to slouch, and then they're going to go to a more comfortable position, which is usually them laying on the floor. And a lot of instructors get very frustrated when they're laying on the floor thinking, oh, this kid's lazy. And the instructors get embarrassed thinking the parents are watching them, when I explain that, hey, listen, that's their stage of development. That's why crawling is one of the skills in the early skills program, because it helps develop those core muscles. So there's a lot of strategies that you can deploy to help them sit still without expecting it. For example, we utilize healthy competition. You can say, okay, let's see who can sit still and hold their head up the longest while I'm talking, right? So that healthy competition gives them a little bit of that perseverance to sit better versus just saying, if you don't sit still, then you're in trouble. So that's just one example of what to expect in a 3 and 4 year old class. Another example, jumping into 5 and 6 year olds. Let's talk about their emotional stage of development. 5 and 6 year olds want to make their role models proud. And one of the things that you're going to notice with your kindergartners and your first graders is they're going to come in with gifts. Like they're going to give you bracelets, they're going to give you artwork, they're going to give you candy. All of these things are just because they want to build a relationship with you, because they're getting out of that preschool stage where they're very self-centered, and now they want to make you proud. The part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, where they release dopamine, is wanting to make their role models proud. So one of the things you should expect in your 5 and 6 year old program is for them to constantly interrupt you, because everything you say, they're trying to relate to something else and share that with you. They're big time sharers. So, for example, in my 5 and 6 year old class, one time I was telling them, stand strong like a dinosaur. And one kid interrupted and said, dinosaur, I have dinosaur toys at home. And then one kid said, I have dinosaur coloring book. And another kid said, I have dinosaur underwear. And next thing you know, the entire class was talking about dinosaurs. It had nothing to do with martial arts. And at that point, I was embarrassed that the kid interrupted me. And an old school mindset might say, all right, this kid interrupted me, you have to do 10 push-ups, which then really disappoints the child. It triggers the cortisol, puts them in fight, flight, freeze, or faint. And then that is what leads to the child eventually dropping out. And if you understand that that's part of their emotional stage of development, is to share, which means that they interrupt you and you embrace it instead of punishing them. A scenario would be like, wow, you guys all like dinosaurs? What's your favorite dinosaur? Raise your hand if you like T-Rex. Raise your hand if you like Stegosaurus. Okay, now when I say go, everybody stand like your favorite dinosaur. So you redirect it in a way that understands and builds on their emotional stage of development instead of breaking it down. So those are just two perfect examples. The physical stage of development of 3 and 4 year olds not really having that core muscle development to sit still. The 5 and 6 year olds that interrupt you. These are reasons why instructors say they don't want to teach kids that age, right? They don't want to teach 3 and 4 year olds because they're lazy and they roll around on the ground. Or I don't want to teach 5 and 6 year olds because they don't have discipline. They interrupt me all the time. If you're understanding that's part of their stage of development, you can go with it and you can help them grow through your experience. And you're going to have very successful programs if you do it the right way.
Yeah. Those were things that really stood out to me because I was listening to those videos, being part of SKILLZ, and I was just going, gosh, she's so right. I definitely know I have gotten onto kids for, wiggling or moving around, and man, it doesn't even have anything to do with whether or not they're super focused or not focused. It really has to do with development. One other thing that I thought was really key and really crucial, and um, you talked a lot about comprehension in those videos as well, like just being that children understanding. And one of the examples you gave was like, okay, guys, we're going to get Eddie, and Eddie's going to go be the line leader. And all the kids stand up and they go and they rush and they get in line. And you were just talking about comprehension and in general, that it takes time to develop that comprehension. And that sometimes is why kids don't understand what you're saying. It's not that they're not hearing it, but they can't get it. They can't understand it. Do you find that so many instructors have too high of an expectation, and maybe they're just not matching it to what the kids can actually physically understand?
Yeah. So, the example that I use, I'm not sure if I do it in that particular course because that was a little bit older, but the example I use is I took 4 years of Spanish in high school. But if I
Mm,
were to go to Mexico and sit down with a family in Mexico City that all they speak is Spanish and have dinner and have conversations with them, even with 4 years of Spanish, I'm not going to be able to keep up. I'm going to okay, the black cat went in the house. Okay, and just get the gist of what they're saying, but they're already on to the next conversation. And
yeah.
if you think about it, 4-year-olds only have 4 years of English, right? And then 5 years only have 5 years. So it takes it's the same concept as if you're trying to speak to somebody in another language. If it's not your primary language, you have to slow your words down and expect them to just get the gist of what you're saying. So the example I use with Eddie is if you have a bunch of 3 and 4-year-olds sitting down and you say, Eddie, I want you to go over there and demonstrate this kick. The other kids here demonstrate kick and they see Eddie get up and go. So they think,
Mm,
oh, I have to go demonstrate the kick too. And
yeah.
that's where it stems from. And a lot of instructors don't understand that. As you mentioned, their expectations are significantly higher. You think just because they understand the English language, because we're here in America, right, that they understand a wealth of vocabulary, and their vocabulary is not established. As a matter of fact, their vocabulary doesn't really get established fully until they're in the second, third grade. When you're in the
Mm.
first grade and below, you're learning to read. Second grade and above, you're reading to learn. So that's really when their comprehension starts to pick up steam. But before then, your expectations need to be lowered a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I saw that, some of the stuff that you were saying, I saw that kind of reflected in my own son. We adopted him from China when he was 3.5, and he already had a bit of a speech delay there. He hadn't actually started speaking in Mandarin. So when he came here, he not only had to learn a new language, but he had to learn how to speak just in general. And
Mm-hmm.
his ability to be able to comprehend things doesn't always match his age. And you also talk about different levels of readiness, I guess you would say, in the kids, and being able to test them and evaluate them. How important do you think that is to look across your class? And we're talking about generalities right now. We're talking about generalities for kids, but you have the superstar kids that are just, doing flying sidekicks at 4. And then you have, the kids that are going to match the age. And then I think you also have kids that, for whatever reason, just aren't there. Are there strategies that school owners should be using to measure that in their classes? And then what should they be doing with that information?
Well, so that's what the skills program is all about. So what we did is for each particular age group, we identified 8 skills that they're developing, and within each one of those skills, you're going to have some kids. There's going to be 2 skills that each child is really, really good at. 2 skills that they have a lot of room for improvement, and then 4 that are in the middle. And they're not always going to be the same. So the concept of skills is that every kid has talent, every kid has value that they add to the world, but it's going to be different depending on where they are in their stage of development, but also what fits their best needs. Here's a perfect example. I read an article earlier today about, because I'm a big huge competition person, so I've been watching the Olympics, and they were talking about, and I don't know his name, but he was in one of the relay races for the men, and he ran the third part of the relay race, and it helped the men win a medal. Well, while he was doing his race, that part of the race, this particular guy, the commentator said that he was the most disorganized swimmer of the team. And he had to go on to explain at the end that all of the Olympic swimmers voted him most likely to miss the bus, which basically means he's a very disorganized guy when it comes to organization, but he's a powerful swimmer. And imagine if he would have been overlooked because he's so disorganized, because that's not his skill, but his skill is powerful swimming. So the same concept carries over to your martial arts class. You might have a kid who doesn't have really good jump psychics, but they're highly intellectual and they can pick up a form just like that, right? We see all of that. And that's why skills is so cool, is because there's 8 different skills they're assessed on, and you get a score of 1 to 5. So you can see where your strengths are, where you have room for improvement, and where you kind of fit in the middle on those programs.
That's great. And so let's say that we're speaking to a school owner right now who's listening to this and going, yeah, maybe I should start working with younger kids. Maybe I should do it. What would you say to that school owner about maybe the revenue that they're missing, the impact? Like, why teach younger kids when it seems like so much effort? I think that's what really scares people away, is the effort.
Well, if you have a good program in play and you have good systems in play, it's actually so much easier to teach this age group than the older age groups. In fact, I have this guy, Steve Cowan. I'm going to give him a shout out. He's a BJJ guy from.
I know Steve.
Okay, so I met him through Alan Belcher's event. You and I kind of ran into Alan Belcher AV circles back in the day, and one of the first times I talked with him, he's like, I'll never work with kids that young. And then COVID happened, and when COVID happened, he had to pivot, and at the time we were giving away free Zoom class planners to everybody. We actually crashed Dropbox, Crash OneDrive with how much we shared to the industry for free. And he was like, well, I don't really have a choice. And now all these parents have all these kids at home and they don't know what to do with them. So we're doing these Zoom classes. So he started with the 5 and 6-year-old program. And he said it was his favorite class to teach. He had so much fun. The kids had a blast. He went from being mostly adult BJJ to now mostly being a skills school. He's quadrupled his revenue since then. So if you're a school owner who thinks, I don't think it's an income generator, we have a lot of skill schools that are doing 6 figures a year. And here's the cool part. 3 and 4-year-old class is only 30 minutes long twice per week. 5 and 6-year-old class, 45 minutes long 2 times per week. It's a lucrative niche market because there's not a lot of other sports and activities that can cater to children that young on a long-term basis. My son did soccer shots, seasonally when he was younger, and it was like 6-week programs, but the skills program takes you through 9 belt levels. So it really is a lucrative program. And, really the secret is it's a hard class to run unless your instructors are highly trained, but then that means that you don't have to necessarily charge cheaper prices. As a matter of fact, you could charge just as much, and in some cases more, because there's nothing else. It really depends on where your market is. We've got some schools who, for a 30-minute early skills class, they actually charge $15 more per month for that program for 2 reasons. Number 1, there's nothing else for 4 and under. And also number 2, they keep the class size to a manageable level. So they limit the class to 12 kids at one time. So because there's that cap and they always have a waiting list on, they can come in higher price points.
Yeah. I think that's a really powerful point for people that maybe they're just missing out on that. And we see this with school owners that work with us inside of 7FD all the time. It's so sometimes because we're doing online marketing and we're doing business strategy and systems with them, some school owners are like, oh, I'm just getting too many young kids. I'm getting too many parents that are, inquiring about young kids. And I'm like, this is the time. You need to enroll them now. Like, don't wait. And it's just such a huge thing. I think I'm biased. I started when I was 3, so I think I'm really biased. My dad started training me back then, and I just think it's the best thing ever. But as we all know, training younger kids, they sometimes have bad behavior. They don't do everything that they're supposed to do, either because of their developmental stage or because they've picked up bad habits. How would you suggest that school owners should think about dealing with what they would quote unquote say is bad behavior? And then how do we talk to parents about that behavior too? Because I think a lot of school owners are like, oh, I don't want to, if I step on those parents' toes and tell them what their kid is doing wrong, they're going to quit. And I think maybe there's a different conversation that needs to be had altogether.
Well, the first thing is to understand that poor behavior, it's not permanent. Poor behavior is an indication of a need or a lack of a development in a certain area. And as you start to embrace child development, like I do, and right now I study it. I'm always diving into a different book, just learning and growing and sharpening my sword when it comes to child development. When a child shows poor behavior, it's almost like a house on fire, and I'm the firefighter. And I'm the one who's putting on my jacket, putting on my helmet, grabbing the hose, and going and solving the problem. So I chase the why behind the poor behavior and figure out how can I teach this child and help this child develop in this specific area versus, oh, this child's bad, I'm going to have to ask them to leave my program. So in some cases, poor behavior might hit an instructor's ego because they feel like they can't just command the proper behavior all the time. But what we train our skills instructors to do is have the mindset of let's be the ones to help them grow through those poor behaviors. And then secondly, when it comes to the parents, it's really educating the parents in as many ways as possible through blogs, through articles, sharing books. We have an entire parent skills section in our skills library. I don't know if you even saw that part yet, the parent skills program.
I had Chastity walk through a little bit of it. It's deep.
Yeah. And so we're constantly sharing blogs. We're constantly sharing strategies and tips. And then we have a wealth of resources and guides for the parents. So, for example, the parents who coach from the sideline, we actually have a guide on why it's counterproductive. For parents who say that their children want to quit, we have a guide for that. For parents who have children who display a lot of meltdowns, which is vertical disintegration, we have a guide for that. So we have a wealth of resources that we're constantly sharing. So we have over 100 different blogs that we share with the parents, and we say, hey, listen, this is the specific behavior that we're seeing from your child in class, and it's becoming a pattern that's not very common for children in our class in this group environment for their age. So I'm going to give you some resources to check out to see if that helps you. And you know what? There's parents who get defensive and parents who get upset, but I'd rather take the risk of helping the child and helping the parent through the best resources that I could possibly provide versus turning a blind eye and ignoring it and then having this poor behavior live on in my class that negatively affects the other children, and then those parents are disappointed that I'm allowing it. So in other words, I'd rather have a parent mad at me because I'm approaching their child with a poor behavior than have another parent mad at me because I'm allowing that poor behavior.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Kind of circling back to Steve Cowan, I saw in his post today that he's a certified pediatric ninja, and I think that's a term that you have coined, and it's part of the skills program. What is it? Tell me about it.
He's actually a master. So
okay.
Yeah, so he went through the program 3 times. So first time is certified, then it's advanced, and then it's master. So it's kind of a funny story. On the way to one of my instructor certification courses, the guy who was sitting next to me was striking up a conversation and asked me what I did, and I explained to him how I have a company called SKILLZ, and we license children's martial arts curriculums, and we also do instructor training. And he asked me to go and kind of some examples, and of course I went through the stages of development. And he's like, so you're like a pediatric ninja specialist. And the next day I trademarked it because I just thought it was the coolest thing.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
And then for all the nerds, the skills nerds I call them, when I do these child development workshops, you did the crash course. The child development workshop, which I'm actually going to be coming to your school to do. It's 6 hours long. And there's people who I want more. I want so much more of this. So I wrote a course on it, and it dives into brain biology in children, brain connectivity, emotional intelligence, mentoring, parent styles, parent SKILLZ, and it really is basically, if you take this course, you become very well rounded in child development, specifically as it applies to being a martial arts instructor or coach. And you can take it multiple times, because I did one time, and everybody's like, well, can I do it again? And I was like, sure, then we'll just put you advanced. And then they're like, can I do it again? And then I was like, sure, now you can become a master. And it's funny because Stephen Cowan now has already been through it 3 times. And now he's doing it again in October. It's a 6-week course, and he's still signed up. And I was like, but you already got your master's. You can almost teach the program. He's like, I can't get enough. He goes, I want to keep my sword sharp. So this is the guy who, one of Alan Belcher's masterminds, is like, I'll never teach kids, to now just being a raving, nerdy fan of it, which is super cool.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So you, I think, as well as me, like, we've been doing martial arts our whole life. My main style is Kempo. I think you 7th degree in Taekwondo. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. How did growing up in the Taekwondo culture, did any of that shape, kind of what you're doing now, your overall philosophy, or did you just kind of go completely 180 from what was happening in that? Like, talk about that.
I think that my experience through the martial arts, I've been a world champion, and I had my 7th degree black belt actually through Super Dan Anderson. I don't know if you know who he is, but freestyle martial artist. And all of my experience and all the different styles of martial arts just kind of helped me build what's called the reverse training concept in our SKILLZ programs. So instead of kids or adults or whoever join martial arts and then build skills through martial arts, SKILLZ is the opposite. So we break down based on your age. We break down the 8 skills that you're developing, as I explained, and then we plug martial arts into that. So my extensive experience in martial arts is giving me this, like, from this top down view of how the program can develop and evolve, which is really neat, because that way 3 and 4-year-olds, when they graduate the 8 skills, then they can go into the 5 and 6-year-old program, and then they work on 8 new skills that are appropriate for the stage of development while learning martial arts. Then they graduate, and then they go into the core skills and learn 8 new skills, and then they go to extreme skills and then elite skills. So it really extends the lifespan of their martial arts journey, because there's 8 different skills now that they're building by using martial arts as the vehicle versus trying to train in martial arts and acquire skills through their experience.
And you've formulated all these programs to just take someone from 3 and 4 years old all the way up. I have students that have been with me since they were little kids, and now they're like senior instructors. I'm sure you've experienced the same thing. So is this what you're trying to do, is create a commonality of people sticking with martial arts long term?
Absolutely, to the point where it's, instead of it becoming redundant and boring, which can happen. I quit and started martial arts many times, particularly in my preteen and teen years. And even when I was a young adult, it was kind of the same thing. You get your next level of black belts, and then you learn a new form, and you learn a new weapons form. And after a while, that just kind of became very redundant, where the SKILLZ program is more of, okay, let's take what you've learned and let's take what you've developed, and now let's apply it to this skill. And for every skill, there's a challenge that you have to accomplish, and you get assessed on. So for our students and our senior ranking students, they love it because there's always something new and challenging that's going to target new skills as they advance through the programs.
Yeah. What, if you're trying to keep students that long and then, training them to become instructors, all those things, I think also part of it is getting people to actually come in the door and be excited about that future, because those people can't see that when they come in the door for the first time. If there's a school owner that's sitting there going, well, all I need to do is be able to showcase this value, what would you say is more important for that school owner to do in their first initial lesson or the first couple of weeks to really show the parent what is possible through the program? I don't know if there's anything that you're particularly doing or what you would recommend for school owners to do.
Yeah. So for SKILLZ schools, when the student comes in for the first class, it's not a free class. It's not an intro lesson where let me show you how to do a high block and a punch. Let me show you how to bow properly. All those things are really good, but what we do is we take it to that next level to position ourselves as child development experts and also highlight the value of understanding what the skills program is. So, for example, if you have a 5-year-old who comes in, we run them through the basic skills pre-evaluation, and we run them through those 8 skills, and we have one little activity per skill, and we score them on a scale of 1 to 5. And then we say, hey, based on this score chart, here's where your child's strengths are. So this is where your child's going to thrive in our program. And then these are the skills where your child's going to show the most improvement through this program. And what they're going to do is every time they take a class, they're going to work on one skill, and they have to collect all 8 of their skill stripes. Then they're going to test for their first belt, and they're going to highlight how they've improved in each one of those skills. And then they got to repeat the process as they go through each belt level. So it's measurable and it's progressive, so that by the time they finish that program, we put them in the top 10% of their stage of development. So it's really exciting for parents who, like I said, you could target a whole new market. You're not just targeting kids who want to learn martial arts. You're targeting parents who want to help their children become the best version of themselves through active sports and activities. And we just use martial arts as a vehicle. So there's more parents who are excited about that and interested about that. That's why one of the things that we constantly are explaining when skills schools reach such a high level of success quickly, they're asking, what specific market tools are you using that your program's growing so fast? And it's word of mouth. Just like word of mouth is the number one tool. But parents are telling their friends, this isn't just martial arts and kicking and punching. This is so much more. It's play-based, it's game-based. They're learning skills, and they're building on them, and they're showing you, and they're mapping their progress on focus, on teamwork, and coordination, control, on discipline. And parents are enthusiastically telling their friends how awesome it is, and we get a lot more referrals, and our skills members get a lot more referrals, specifically in the 6 and under program, through the doors because of that.
Because of that. That's very interesting. So it's an evaluation process that they're doing, and then being able to present that. Yeah, no, that's huge. That's powerful. So if somebody's watching this and they're like, okay, I get it. I think I need to look into skills. Like what does that process look like? How do they find out about skills? Like where should they go?
Yeah, so they go to skillsworldwide.com, and it's spelled SKILLZ, skillsworldwide.com. And then there's a couple of different membership levels. We have a bronze tier, which is access to all of our age-specific drills, all of our parenting content, the SKILLZ University that you mentioned. There's a silver membership that also includes the 6 and under curriculum. Then we have the gold membership, which includes all of our curriculums, or your VIP gold, which is even a higher level, which is everything that we have to offer, plus monthly masterminds and so forth. But the cool thing is when you join SKILLZ, then our director of customer service, who's Chastity, which pretty much everybody in the industry knows Chastity, unless you're living under a rock, she sets up a discovery call with you, and she finds out what specifically are you looking to get out of it, where do you need the most help, and if you don't know, then she throws out a couple of different samples. Do you need help here, and then from there she turns you over to a skills expert, which is an active skills school owner who is doing it who's running skills at a very high level. And then that expert does an onboarding call, and they say, here's your 3 action steps on how to run the program. So it's a pretty neat experience. And if for some reason it's not for you, then it's not for you. We don't have any kind of term-based commitments or anything like that, but we're pretty sure that if we get, going to keep you.
Yeah. Well, we're super excited to be installing, a lot of these things in our school, and being able to communicate with our 7-figure dojo clients about this as well. I think it's going to be a game changer for a lot of people. What's next for you? I mean, you travel around the country, do these workshops, you've got SKILLZ Worldwide. Like, what are you trying to do for the future?
Well, first things first, just so that everybody who's listening knows, we're also very excited about having you, 7-figure dojo, as a SKILLZ member, because we believe that a lot of the insight and knowledge that you have to growing your martial arts school to 7 figures, it's not just curriculum that's going to get you there, and not just instructor training that's going to get you there, which is our area of expertise. We believe you coming in now, and then also understanding the way our system and our model works, well, now you're going to be able to help them take their school to an even higher level. So we're excited to have you here and understanding our systems, and then being able to help our skills members take their school to an even higher level, as I mentioned. So there's so many different things that I'm working on right now. One of them is working on the instructor development program. Most of the material and content that you have, that you had access to, that you watched through SKILLZ University, and utilizing that curriculum and utilizing that content to reach other coaches outside the martial arts industry. So we are already working with a couple of soccer organizations, flag football organizations, cheer, dance, those types of things. So we're going to have coaching programs available for that as well. I'm also working on a book. It's been in the mix for a while. Thank you. And then I'm also working with Super Connector and Jen Gottlieb, and I went to her event in Build Your Brand Live in Atlanta in May, and working on getting on stages outside of the martial arts industry to bring awareness to what SKILLZ is doing, specifically in the martial arts industry. So my goal is to start speaking on stages at any events that are related towards child development or parenting, and explaining, hey, you probably don't know this, but there are martial arts schools out there that aren't necessarily teaching your child just martial arts. They're just using martial arts as the vehicle to help your child develop as a whole, and really exposing them to these concepts, which ultimately will just help take SKILLZ brand to that next level. So that's my aspiration for the next year. I've had plenty of podcast opportunities. I'm on a break right now this summer. I made a special concession to do the podcast with you. But going into the fall, I told everybody to reach out to me August 1st and beyond, and I'll start doing some podcast interviews and getting out there to get more exposure. I actually did a podcast with Victoria Azarenka, who is a famous tennis player. It's called Think About It. Did it in connection with the U.S. Open 2 years ago, because she found out about me through the producer, and that was exciting. And it was great because a lot of the people in that audience who watched that podcast then reached out to me saying, okay, I live here. Is there a SKILLZ school there? And it was pretty cool because I was able to connect several schools with parents who heard that podcast, who wanted to put their kids at just on that one interview.
That's incredible. Fantastic. Well, super excited about the future ahead. It's going to be a lot of good things in store, especially for this industry and then outside the industry as well. And I think that just your goal overall to help kids and your heart for children is really cool and awe-inspiring. And, you can really tell when somebody's called to do something because of the depth to which they'll go to do it. And that's evident in all the things you've been doing. Melody, thank you so much for being on the 7 Figure Secrets podcast. Really enjoyed having you here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. That was fun.
Awesome. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.